They gave us the removal notice on a Vethal Thursday, which is the longest day of the week by about 4 of their hours, and smells like cooling hydraulic fluid and the particular kind of institutional cleaning compound they use on the gymnasium floors, which I know because cleaning the gymnasium floors was my job, has been my job for 11 years. The notice came through Facility Coordinator Soran's office, routed down from the Vethalal Joint Athletic and Conditioning Complex's Efficiency Committee. The committee was a rotating body of 8 auditors, all smooth-skinned, all in matching pale gray administrative coats, all carrying identical data slates they hadn't looked up from since they arrived that morning. The notice said our contract, my crew's contract, 6 humans maintaining the physical infrastructure of a joint species transit hub gymnasium serving roughly 4,000 registered athletes and conditioning users, was flagged for removal under the Efficiency Restructuring Initiative, Subclause 11, Paragraph 3, Non-Essential Biological Labor, Ornamental Function Only. Ornamental. I read that 3 times. Then I folded the notice, put it in my chest pocket, and went back to resurfacing Court 7. The committee had been on site for 2 days before the notice came. I watched them from the corner of the main conditioning hall on day 1, 8 pale gray coats moving in a tight formation, data slates angled forward, murmuring to each other in that low 3-tone Vethal register that the translation units render as preliminary assessment and preliminary assessment confirmed, and this correlates with preliminary assessment. They watched my crew work. Watched Pren carrying a replacement tension spool for the cable resistance rigs, 80 kilograms of wound composite, balanced on her shoulder because the freight cart was locked for maintenance. Watched Helu on his back, under the hydraulic compression deck, adjusting a damper coupling by feel because the access clearance was 12 centimeters and no diagnostic arm fit in there. Watched me cut and lay a new floor panel on Court 7 with a hand guide and a straight edge because the automated panel system had logged a calibration error 6 weeks ago and the replacement parts were still in transit from the outer rim depot. One of the auditors, the one with the rank stripe on his collar, Coordinator 2nd Veth Orak, according to the facility roster, watched me lay the panel for about 90 seconds. Then he said something to the auditor beside him. The translation unit gave me labor-intensive and methodologically redundant. I kept cutting. The official efficiency presentation was held in the main briefing room on day 3. My crew wasn't invited. I found out afterward from Soran, who told me in the flat, careful tone she uses when she's trying to keep her bioluminescent stress response from showing through her collar. The committee had presented a full replacement model, 4 automated maintenance units, the Vethalal Standard M7 series, rated for gymnasium and athletic facility environments, and 1 remote diagnostic system for structural assessment. Total operating cost, 30% below our contract. Total coverage, classified as equivalent. The committee had the slide ready. They had the cost comparison ready. They had Subcause 11 ready. What they did not have was Helu's damper coupling adjustment from the day before, which had kept the hydraulic compression deck running through a 300-athlete morning session, or Prenien's tension spool, which she'd carried by hand because the freight system was locked, and the session roster didn't have a gap wide enough to wait for it to unlock, or Court 7's floor panel, which I'd cut by hand because the automated system had been in calibration error for 6 weeks, and the athletes were still using the court. The M7 units were demonstrated the following morning. The first unit encountered the damper coupling under the hydraulic deck at 0610. The access clearance was 12 centimeters. The M7's diagnostic arm required 17. It logged the area as inaccessible and filed a maintenance deferral. The committee noted this and said the arm could be reconfigured for narrower clearance in the next firmware update, scheduled for the following quarter. Helu was already down there with a wrench when they finished the sentence. He was done in 4 minutes. The second unit was tasked with transporting a replacement tension spool from the equipment depot to the cable resistance rigs. The spool massed at 83 kilograms. The M7's rated carry capacity was 60 kilograms. It filed a request for a secondary freight unit to assist. The secondary freight unit was in use on the upper deck. The M7 logged a transport deferral. Estimated wait time 2 hours. Pren was at the rig with the spool in 9 minutes. She'd patted her shoulder with a folded work towel. The committee reclassified both events as calibration variances. The notation said, within acceptable deployment parameters. The third demonstration went differently. Not better, differently. The Remote Structural Assessment Unit was tasked with evaluating the load-bearing rating of the east wall anchor system, the one that holds the overhead climbing cable array, which gets about 600 uses per week from athletes ranging from 60 to 220 kilograms. The unit ran its sensor sweep. The sweep took 40 minutes. The report came back flagging 3 anchor points as within tolerance, but approaching advisory review threshold. Advisory review threshold means not yet a problem, but worth watching. My crew had flagged those same 3 anchors in a handwritten maintenance log 8 months ago. We'd replaced the load brackets on 2 of them in the following week. The third one we'd reinforced with a secondary mount because the replacement bracket size wasn't in stock, and we'd worked out that a double mount of the next size down achieved the same rating. The M7 sensor sweep had not detected the secondary mount. It had assessed the third anchor using the original load specifications. Its tolerance calculation was based on a bracket that was no longer there. I didn't say anything. I pulled out my copy of the maintenance log, paper, because I keep paper, and set it on the table in front of Coordinator 2nd Veth Orak. I opened it to the relevant page. I put my finger on the entry dated 8 months prior. Then I moved my finger to the secondary mount notation and the load calculation we'd done by hand in the margin. He looked at it for a long time. Facility Chief Soren spoke once during the entire presentation. She had been sitting at the far end of the table, perfectly still, in the way she gets when she is waiting for something specific to happen. When it happened, she picked up her data slate. She pulled up the committee's own structural integrity baseline report, the one they had filed on day 1, which the M7 assessment had just contradicted at a load-bearing anchor point. She set the slate on the table, so the discrepancy was visible to everyone. Then she said, "The reclassification from advisory review to confirmed variance requires immediate physical reinspection under Compact Maintenance Standard 7. That inspection requires manual access to the anchor cavity. The cavity clearance is 9 centimeters. She didn't say anything else. Coordinator 2nd Veth Orak looked at the slate. He looked at the M7 unit, which was still parked against the wall with its 17-centimeter diagnostic arm folded against its chassis. He looked at the maintenance log still open on the table in front of him. He picked up his data slate. The reclassification came through at 1340 that day. The human maintenance crew contract amended from non-essential biological labor, ornamental function only, to load-bearing operational staff, physical access specialist classification, essential. The efficiency restructuring subclause notation was removed. A budget line for updated equipment was added. The committee left on the 1600 transit. I finished Court 7 around 1715. The floor panel sat flush. The seam was tight enough that you had to look for it. Soren came by as I was putting the guide away. She stood at the edge of the court for a moment, looking at the work. "The anchor reinspection is scheduled for tomorrow morning," she said. 0600 works, I said. She nodded once and left. I folded the drop cloth, stacked the tools, and turned off the court lights on my way out. The notice was still in my chest pocket. I didn't throw it away. I keep things like that. You never know when the paperwork becomes load-bearing.